So, when a private equity firm or any strategic buyer looks at a company, what they're really buying is an engine for future cash flow. But here's the critical question, the one that can make or break the entire deal. What happens if the founder, the chief engineer, is the only person who actually knows how to run that engine? Today, we are going deep with a forensic analysis of founder dependency. You know, this is probably the single most important question in any acquisition. It's not about how the company did in the past, it's all about its future sustainability. Are you acquiring a self-sustaining asset that's going to generate returns for years? Or are you just hiring a very, very expensive employee who might just walk out the door tomorrow? And really, the answer boils down to one of two things. On one side, you've got a true, sustainable asset. It runs on documented systems, it has professional management, and a diverse customer base. It's an institution. But on the other side, you've got what's really just an individual's practice. The founder handles all the sales, all the critical knowledge is just in their head, and the team can't do anything without getting their approval. The difference in value between these two, it is absolutely immense. So how do M&A pros actually tell the difference? Well, they start with a really simple, if maybe a little grim, thought experiment. In the industry, we call it the bus test.
This is the question. It's not sentimental, but it cuts right to the heart of the risk. EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's basically a stand-in for the company's operating cash flow. It's the lifeblood. If that number goes to zero the day the founder disappears, well, you haven't bought a business, you've bought a job, and it just became vacant.
Now, this vulnerability, it's got a formal name, key man risk, or founder dependency. It is the single biggest risk that an acquisition will suffer catastrophic financial damage from the loss of just one person. And frankly, the entire due diligence process is designed to find and quantify this exact risk. Okay, so how do you actually investigate key man risk in a systematic way? Well, this whole process unfolds during a really critical phase of any deal, called due diligence. And due diligence, it's not just about checking the financials. No. It is a deep forensic investigation into every single part of the company. You got to think of it like an audit, but it's designed to uncover every hidden liability and dependency before any contracts get signed. And just to give you some context on where this fits in, take a look at the typical M&A deal process. Right after a target is identified, boom, the due diligence investigation begins. And whatever is uncovered in this phase is going to dictate the price, the terms, and the entire structure of the negotiation that follows. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The investigators, they act like detectives, right? They're following specific clues to find out where all this dependency is hiding. So let's break down the three main areas they dig into. All right, first up, they go after the customer relationships. They'll look at the top 5 customers and they'll ask, are you loyal to the company's product, or are you really just loyal to the founder who you've been playing golf with for the last 20 years? This is what we call analyzing relationship stickiness. And believe me, if 80% of your revenue is tied to one person's friendships, that is a massive red flag. The second big clue is all about knowledge. Where is the secret sauce? Is the company's core value proposition written down in clear, standard operating procedures that anyone could follow? Or is it just trapped in this uncodified knowledge silo inside the founder's brain? If you can't replicate the process for building the product without the founder, your institutional knowledge is basically zero. And third, who actually runs the company day to day? Investigators will sit down and interview the second-tier management. We call that the N1 layer, the folks reporting to the founder. Do they have budget authority? Can they make real decisions? This whole process is about assessing their operating autonomy. If the team can't function on its own, you've got a huge succession risk the second that founder walks out the door. Now, here's the thing. Discovering these risks doesn't automatically kill a deal. In fact, this is where the smartest buyers really separate themselves from the pack. They don't run away, they manage the risk. They build specific safeguards right into the deal structure itself. One of the most common tools for this is called an earn-out. Basically, it's a contingent payment. A chunk of the sale price is held back, and it only gets paid to the founder if the business hits specific performance targets after the deal closes. It's a really powerful way to make sure the founder is incentivized to ensure a smooth and successful transition. Another key tool is indemnification. Just think of this like an insurance policy that's built right into the purchase agreement. The seller formally agrees to cover the buyer's financial losses if a specific risk that was identified during due diligence actually happens. Like, for instance, if that top customer leaves within the first year. And of course, buyers will use other strategies too. Things like offering financial retention packages to keep essential employees from leaving with the founder. They'll also often use a transition services agreement, or a TSA, which is a contract for the founder to stay on in a consulting role for a while to make sure all their knowledge and relationships get transferred properly.
So after all this forensic analysis, after all this digging, how does it all come together? How do you deliver a final verdict on whether the target is a high-risk practice or a sustainable asset? Well, this chart illustrates the final report card perfectly. In the red zone, you have that high dependency practice. The founder handles sales, nothing's written down, and the team is totally powerless. But in the blue zone, you have an institutionalized asset. We're talking diversified clients, documented systems, and an empowered management team that has P&L, that's profit and loss, responsibility. The entire goal of due diligence is to figure out exactly where on the spectrum the target company falls. And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. The goal of this whole forensic exercise isn't to find a perfect business with zero dependency. I mean, those are incredibly rare. The real goal is to accurately understand the risks so that you can properly price them into the deal. High dependency doesn't always kill an acquisition, but it will absolutely 100% lower the valuation. A business deep in that red zone might see its valuation cut by 20, 30%, maybe even more. So to wrap up this explainer, I'll just leave you with a question to think about for your own business or your own organization. If you walked away tomorrow, what essential knowledge, what critical relationship would walk away with you? The honest answer to that question reveals the true, transferable value of what you've actually built.